Hello and welcome to the video. Season 2 of the Cycle Frontier has just dropped, and so I've put together this guide to help you get a head start on the competition in the grind through this game. There are some amazing changes coming to Season 2, and so if you've been putting off trying the game or stopped playing during Season 1, I really recommend hopping back on for another go. This video is going to be a top level guide covering all the areas you need basic knowledge of to get started while not diving too deep into the nitty gritty of it all. I'll have all the segments broken up into chapters, so if you want to skip around to relevant sections, feel free, and if you're new here, subscribe to help the channel grow. Anyways, let's get into it. For Season 2 of the Cycle Frontier, there will be 3 maps on Fortuna 3 for players to explore. However, there is a significant change to how the maps will work for this season. First off, we have Bright Sands. This is the map you'll first drop into and where you'll spend most of your time early in the campaign. Danger here is relatively low when it comes to AI, apart from a few areas like base camp, dig site, and the jungle, in particular where you can come across more dangerous creatures. Primarily, you'll be fighting AI that will consist of Striders and Rattlers, both of which are very easy to kill early on. And other than that, the main threat will be other players. This map is great for farming items for quests and low tier crafting such as blue and green armor, but PvP is very common, so be aware of that. Second up, we have Crescent Falls. This is the second map, and this season it will be locked behind campaign progress, which is something I'm going to talk a bit about in the final chapter of this video on cheating, so stay tuned for more on that. In Season 1 you could access all the maps at launch, but this has been changed up for Season 2. Unlike Bright Sands, the base level of PvE for this map is significantly harder, with many Marauders, Crushers, and the elite variations of all creatures, which will take much more damage than their normal versions. However, once you have access to better weaponry from the factions, these creatures will still be relatively easy to kill. Finally, we have Tharis Island, the third and final map, and the new map for this season. I was fortunate enough to get to test out the map ahead of Season 2, and from my brief time on it, I have to say it looks amazing. Unfortunately, I can't give too much away, as the devs unsurprisingly want to keep it a surprise for players, but it plays like none of the other maps, and I can safely say that you're going to want to experience it for yourself. It'll be the hardest map out of all the 3, and extracts here are going to be a real challenge, but there are going to be some good rewards to get out of it too. A quick note on AI, all AI have weak spots. When you hit them, you will be rewarded with a yellow hit marker, the same as you are when you headshot a player. By locating the weak spots, usually the head or mouth area indicated by a yellow area in the skin, you can do significantly more damage, as well as stunning the enemy to give you a chance to do further damage. Next up, the factions for Season 2 will remain the same with the ICA, Osiris, and Korolev. Factions have their own shops that can be accessed in the space station between drops and will assign you main campaign quests as well as side jobs that can be completed to earn K-marks, the in-game currency, as well as faction XP and tokens used to upgrade your quarters. By leveling up factions, you will unlock additional weaponry as well as other tools depending on the faction. For instance, leveling up Osiris gives you access to better healing tools, which is often why people level Osiris up first. When it comes to the faction to level up first, my plan this time I think is to target the ICA. The main reason being that I believe their weaponry to be the strongest, particularly the Shattergun, Advocate, and the Brute. The Shattergun in particular was a meta for most of Season 1, and I expect it to also be meta Season 2. Towards the end of each faction questline, you will also unlock endgame activities, such as Laser Drill for Korolev, which will allow you to mine for rare materials, or Osiris, who give you access to the dungeons on Crescent Falls. Crafting is a huge part of the Cycle Frontier. Weapons and heals are the only higher tier items that you can buy from factions when you level them up. If you want better armor or a larger backpack, then you need to craft these. There are many different materials and resources that you can craft within the station, and each will give you their own requirements along with a fee in K-marks that you have to pay. For the most part, crafting green and blue armor, bags, and heals are not that challenging, and once you learn the loot routes, you can build a healthy supply of these items to ensure you're a step ahead of other players running lower tier gear. Obviously, you can also just loot these items off better geared dead players as well. If you'd like some more information on crafting, I do have some videos from Season 1 that I will link now. But I may also do newer versions of these videos for Season 2 depending on how the crafting changes. In terms of upgrades, each prospector has their own quarters at the space station which they can upgrade in between drops. Similar to crafting, upgrades will require specific lootable items as well as faction tokens and an amount of K-marks. Upgrades allow you to increase your stash size, the size of your safe pockets, as well as craft generators which will give you a daily income of K-marks, Aurum, as well as a daily loot crate. All of these can be upgraded to increase the amount of money you earn each day, as well as increase the value of the items that you get in your loot crate. Again, I have a video on this which I will link above, which is kind of my recommendations in Season 1 of what to upgrade first. Upgrading early in a wipe is a great way to ensure you can continually resupply with good gear every time you log onto the game. Healing and armor is my next chapter, and this is a big topic, particularly the armor, which I'm not going to dive into too much because, yeah, you could really get into some detail here. I mentioned this briefly before in the crafting section, but there are two primary ways you can heal yourself during a drop, either by using stims or medkits. Medkits will return you to full health but take a significant time to use and take up a lot of space in your bag. For a quick tip, the higher rarity of medkit, the less it weighs. Stims, on the other hand, are quick to use, taking only 3 seconds, but will heal you a smaller amount than a medkit. White stims, for instance, will heal you 15 HP. The increased rarity of stims increases the amount that they heal you by. Armor quite obviously increases your protection from AI and player damage. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but essentially the higher rarity of armor, the higher protection you have, kind of as expected. Higher rarity armor also comes with increased durability, meaning it can withstand more damage before becoming useless. All armor can be repaired at the crafting station for a fee. There are some changes with armor this season, which makes higher tier armor feel more valuable but slightly harder to craft. They've also adjusted some of the armor variants. Armor variants include tactical and regenerative armor. Tactical armor gives you increased stamina, whereas regenerative armor gives you health back over time. Now, previously in Season 1, tactical armor and regenerative armor would give you slightly less protection, but for Season 2 they have tweaked this, and so tactical armor will give you the stamina boost and the same protection as regular armor, but will be slightly harder to craft. This is going to make interesting change to the meta. I used to like running tactical armor anyway because I liked the increased stamina, particularly as a solo player, but having the added protection as well is going to make this stuff really valuable, and I imagine you're going to see a lot of people running it in Season 2. Next up we have weapons. Now, I'm not going to break down all the weapons here as there have been a lot of tweaks going into Season 2, but we'll give a rough overview of what to look for and also some good starter weapons to use. Also, I'm going to give you probably the best tip about attachments that you will hear. First off, weapons have two basic stats, damage and penetration. Damage is the base amount of damage the weapon will do, and then penetration is kind of how well it will penetrate against armor. Essentially, the way I look at it is you want high penetration. I'm sure someone will tell me that I'm wrong in the comments, and that's fine. I don't fully understand the system and I haven't delved too much into it. But I find with this game, the weapon choice comes a lot down to personal preference and finding a loadout that works for you. As starter weapons go, early wipe in Season 1 was dominated by the bolt-action sniper and the shotguns such as the trench gun and the bulldog, and I see this kind of remaining the same for Season 2. The bolt-action sniper is great for PvP all throughout the season. Early on, the AR-55 is a really good sniper support weapon, but not really great close range. The Manticore is an all-round good gun, which has received a slight velocity buff this season, and the Bulldog is a really cheap shotgun that you can unlock early on, which is really good as well. Personally, Season 2, I would avoid the trench gun and the PDW. The trench gun got heavily nerfed last season, and I think it's completely useless now. The PDW, it's just got a tiny mag size. I don't really like it, but maybe you do. And then finally, like I promised on attachments, don't buy white attachments. The only ones I would buy would be the sight, like the red dot sight, or a 2x scope, and maybe a flashlight. The other attachments are pretty much pointless and are kind of just a waste of money. The way I treat attachments is I just farm them in raid, either off other players or out of loot. Save your K-marks, that's all I can say there. Next up, we have insurance. There are two types of insurance in the Cycle Frontier. Your basic insurance is paid for with K-marks and will give you a cash return for any items lost upon death in a raid. Then there is gear salvage, which will actually look to return these lost items back to you in their original form, if they are not taken. This is paid for in Aurum, the paid for currency, which can also be earned through the battle pass and quarters upgrades, or through insurance tokens, which are only earned during the battle pass. The most important thing about insurance is that it cannot be scammed. If your teammate dies and you go to hide their gear, you'll get a notification saying that if you touch it, you'll void insurance. You cannot play like Tarkov and fraud insurance. If you go hiding gear, exchanging your gear for better gear, you won't get what you've hidden back. That's the long and short of it. And with the gear return insurance, if an enemy player steals your items, then you will get money back instead. Also, on Tharis Island, the new map, there are certain instances when insurance will not work. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, the final point on this isn't really a guide, but I feel like I should talk briefly about cheaters. For a large part of Season 1, cheaters ruined the Cycle Frontier for a lot of people. And I can safely say that the devs at Jaeger are really taking this seriously and are constantly implementing ways to combat cheating. And there are two things that I think they've done which will really help. Firstly, cheat compensation. About 2/3 of the way through Season 1, cheater compensation was introduced, by which if you lost your gear to a cheater, someone who was found to be cheating and then banned, it would get returned to you in the same way that insurance was. Now, this wasn't perfect at launch and they have admitted that, but expect it to be much cleaner this season. Secondly, locking off the harder maps is a huge counter to cheaters. A big problem is RMT, by which cheaters gobble up top tier loot and sell it off for real cash. Crescent Falls last season was riddled with cheaters because of this, but now players have to complete some quests to get access to the maps, which will all have the higher loot on them. Are they going to bother doing that? Are they going to have accounts long enough to do that? Just think you're a cheater and you get access to Crescent Falls or Tharis Island, then you get banned, and you have to grind quests again to get access to that good loot. That's just a pain in the ass, and I think it will really deter a lot of cheaters from doing this. Obviously, you're not going to eliminate everyone, but I think it's a big step forward. Now, this isn't saying that regular players are going to have to grind hours and hours and hours to get access to these maps. For instance, Crescent Falls is going to be accessible after the first campaign missions for each factions, which really aren't that hard to complete. But it is enough of a deterrence in the eyes of developers, and I have to agree, to make doing it multiple times on new accounts a pain in the ass, to be quite frank. Now, don't get me wrong, I wanted to drop into Tharis Island day one, and it is sad that we can't do that, but it's going to make the grind even more satisfying when you finally unlock the map for the first time and you get to dive into it and experience it. Anyways, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this kind of in-depth guide, please drop a like and subscribe to help the channel, and stick around for much more Cycle Frontier videos and some streams on Season 2. Cheers.